Ladies and gentlemen, in this corner, Eddie Gagnon. And in the opposite corner, Kristen Gagnon. This is What's Special About Special.
I wanted to say that.
Well, hello there. My name's Eddie Gagnon.
Eddie, I don't want to be here all night.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. My name's Eddie Gagnon. That was perfect. Kristen.
Your voice.
On today's episode, we interviewed Bobbi Rebell. She's a financial expert that currently has 2 podcasts, one Financial Grown-Up, and then also Money with Friends. She's also an author who wrote How to Be a Financial Grown-Up and currently working on a second book.
This was a fun episode. Bobbi spoke with us about being a special needs parent herself and gave us some great insight for financial management. Please enjoy this episode, and if you like it, don't forget to subscribe and share with a friend.
All right, welcome to the show, Bobbi Rebell. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Bobbi is a certified financial planner, and we're super excited to have her on the show. She's also a parent, correct?
Yes, I am.
And how many kids do you have, Bobbi?
I have 3 kids. I have 2 stepchildren, ages 23 and 20. They keep changing their ages every year, so I have to, focus.
Remember that.
And then I have a 12-year-old.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about, you as a parent and a little bit about yourself.
So I grew up in the New York area and went to Penn and went to I wanted to be a journalist, I should say. I already lost my train of thought. Anyway, so I became a journalist. I worked for CNBC as a production assistant, started at the very bottom. I actually was an intern at CNN before that and worked my way up, eventually became a business news television anchor and literally traveled the country interviewing CEOs from, Bill Gates to, the guys from like Shark Tank. Like I've interviewed Barbara Corcoran, Kevin O'Leary, and so on. And I had a great career in business TV. And then for a number of reasons, one of which we'll talk about, which has to do with my 12-year-old, I decided to pivot and I became an author in large part, one, because I really did want to write this book, but also because I wanted to have a different kind of work schedule, a different lifestyle so that I could be a little more focused on making sure that things were good with the now 12-year-old, because there was a lot of activity going on that, can be challenging for nannies and caregivers. So I wanted to be more hands-on. And so I wrote the book, How to Be a Financial Grown-Up, which now became the podcast, Financial Grown-Up. And I also host another podcast called Money with Friends with Joe Salsihai.
Which is busy because you don't just do that like once a week or once a month. You do this like multiple times a week.
Yeah. So Money with Friends, we cover headlines, usually related to personal finance. We have a rotating cast of thought leaders. And so people, journalists, CEOs and such that come on as guest hosts. And we do that show 6 days a week. Financial Grown-Up. I have highly accomplished people come on and share money stories and the lessons from them and everyday money tips. That used to be 3 days a week, but because I've become so busy with Money with Friends, which is now on Westwood One Networks, we did recently cut Financial Grown-Up back to 1 day a week. And I also do some work with brands, anchoring sponsored content, working as a spokesperson, and I'm working on my next book.
So just a little bit busy.
Yeah, just doing some
being
stuff,
a mom. Being a mom.
A wife and a mother. and also we have a dog, an adorable 8-year-old Maltese Yorkie, who's so cute. Star of my Instagram file.
So you're super busy. I mean, I know what that's like, just being a mother and working, a regular 40-hour-a-week job, and it's exhausting. I can't imagine. I mean, you have to be probably a very type A personality, organized,
you nailed it, Kristen.
A manager.
Total type A. Yes.
You're driven for sure. I mean, yes. You can't, I think that's the type of personality. I think everyone we talk to is who's a mom on this that we interview. We're like, oh, you must be type A. Who's a parent? You're like, oh, you're managing all these things. You're a manager. You're type A, you're a manager. You're managing a household.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a lot of scheduling and planning. And I think that I learned a lot about that from being a journalist, because when you work in television, and I did a lot of live television and I was a producer before I was on camera, you have to hit the commercial breaks or no one gets paid. So you're always back time, and you're always saying it's not how much time you've done, it's how much time you have till the break. So you're always figuring out. So for example, I was here on time because I knew the time we were taping, I literally backpedaled my day through the different things I had to do. So I knew that I had to get organized for dinner, for example, before I came here. So I knew that, half an hour before the interview, I was putting the rice in the rice cooker. An hour before, I was checking that I had all the ingredients for my 12-year-old and I were going to make Chinese orange chicken tonight. So we didn't have an ingredient. So I had to go out to the market quickly. So everything is back timed throughout the whole day. And that comes from journalism.
Yeah. I feel like that's my day every day. And then there's a day where I just lose it and I'm like, yeah, nothing's getting done today. Everything is backwards and I'm going to just ignore it all. And then it backfires. Really, it backfires and I'm super annoyed at myself. And then I'm like, I wish I didn't do that.
I try.
Yeah, but you know what? Here's the thing. There's certain things you have to, my priority is always, if something needs to get done because it impacts somebody else, that's my priority. Right. So for example, that's why the thing I'm having the biggest trouble with right now is writing my second book, because no one's impacted by that. If I don't show up for a Money with Friends taping, well, my partner, Joe High, is impacted clearly.
Yeah.
I have responsibilities to Westwood One, clearly, and so on. If I don't get I have an editor for Financial Grown Up. If I don't get my scripts in on time, it's going to mess up his weekend, let's say. So those things take priority. And that's why other things sometimes fall by the wayside.
Yeah.
And also things that pay money take priority.
Yeah,
if I have
for
a
sure.
client that's going to pay me money and sending out invoices, that's always a priority. Send your invoices. That's my number one business tip. Send the invoice.
Send them on time so that you get paid on time, right?
Exactly. You'd be surprised how many people are sloppy with billing. Get that invoice out.
That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I should be number one.
I can see that.
Seems crazy.
Eddie agrees with me.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm the knucklehead that's like, oh, yeah, I'll grab that later. I'll send that to you later. And Kristen's like, do you want me to send that for you?
5 minutes.
You didn't do it.
Send that in 5 minutes.
Please, because I didn't send that. So.
No. Exactly.
Paid on
Always
receipt.
make sure that's my best business advice. Make sure you get paid.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you did the work if you don't get paid for it.
Well, it's so nice that my financial advisor is getting advice from a professional financial advisor. So I'm just winning through this whole interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your 12-year-old. I know that you've had some, struggles here and there, just like we have, and some other parents in our community. Tell us a little bit about, your experience with your 12-year-old.
So my 12-year-old was always very vivacious, very larger than life, charming personality. But we like to joke, he went from sitting, he didn't crawl, he didn't walk, he just got up and started running. And he was really an adorable handful as a very young child. And like I said, incredibly sweet and loving and very handsome. So he could be charming in that way too. And my stepmother always talks about that. And he would get away with stuff. But when it got to the point where he was in structured environments, little things would come out, and he had a lot of trouble following directions, and it started to become more noticeable, different from other kids. And it was frustrating because he would say, yes, Mom, I understand that we can't, go over there and play with the paints over there. I know we're doing this over here right now, but then he would still go running off in a different direction, doing his own thing. And he would say, I can't help it. We would be, let's say, at a birthday party, and he would be great at circle time, doing a quiet activity. But then let's say if it was a little girl's birthday party and, we're in New York, so sometimes it would be at a club and they take out the disco ball and suddenly they're having this dance party and all the other children are jumping up and down and having the best time. And there's confetti flying and the DJ is having a blast and there's all kinds of stuff happening. And suddenly there's a total meltdown.
Yeah.
And he's hiding under a chair and I don't understand why. And to a parent, this just happening, you're almost embarrassed to the other parents. You don't know what's wrong and you just think that they're misbehaving. And it wasn't until later that I started to learn that this was, he had a lot of sensory issues and things like that. that he couldn't control it. It was, you would say, don't climb up that, we have a lot of scaffolding in New York, and you'd say, don't climb up that scaffolding. It's dangerous. There's, nails coming out of it. There's so many, you're going to fall on concrete. There's so many dangerous things. And, he would run ahead and do it. And he would say, I know it's dangerous. I don't want to do it, but I can't help myself. Yeah. It was just this insane impulse control. And it was incredibly frustrating because you want to help and you've got such a sweet child that says they're trying, but it keeps happening. I mean, I remember once sitting at a restaurant and I looked up and he was suddenly running out the door into traffic, and we were able to stop him. But it was just, this boundless energy, which, you could almost, it would be, if it weren't so dangerous, it would be adorable and funny.
No, yeah.
But it's
a safety thing also, too. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was very scary and yet charming.
Yeah. Well,
such a vivacious, wonderful, sweet personality and the most amazing energy.
Well, because with that same personality, I think, and that same energy, you get that personality where there's somebody who can be so charming because there is that lack of I don't know what the
he's
the best
fearless.
word is.
He literally fearless.
That lack of fear.
He would climb a rock, and if you didn't stop him, he would just jump off the rock. I mean, it was you're fighting to protect this child from himself effectively, and it can be really terrifying as a parent.
Now, is it difficult sometimes to find that boundary line to let them kind of find their own way and be able to do things, but still allow them to kind of have that little bit of no fear, but hold them back enough to give them safety?
Well, you try. I mean, there's a lot of indoor gym classes where they literally can't hurt themselves, and that's good. They're not always listening to the teachers, but there's a lot of amazing teachers with so much patience, and they were great. Yeah. So there absolutely were places that were wonderful for him, and he did very well with things that had an order and a structure, like cooking. He always, to this day, likes to know exactly what is happening each day with respect to which classes were happening, for how long, what was expected of him. He really needs that structure and really thrives on structure and knowing what's going to happen.
Yeah. So like a plan to the day, or a plan to whatever is happening is helpful.
Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, that's actually, I think, something that maybe seems counterintuitive for somebody who has some lack of impulse control, because you'd think that might be difficult for them, thinking, right, oh, we're going to give you structure, when it's hard for them to have structure, but really it's probably something that they strive for or that they need.
It is, exactly. It does seem counterintuitive. And it's interesting because we did end up moving schools for him. The school that he was in was not the right fit, as we like to say euphemistically. And so we had to look for a new school. And I did look at some progressive schools that had really no structure. And I remember dropping him off for the day, and they had to call me to come get him because he said he didn't like it. He didn't know what was going on. It was one of these schools with no walls, and the grades kind of blend. And he really wanted to have a structured classroom. And now he's in a school where I think they're going to loosen up the uniform a little bit. But, he really enjoyed putting on a uniform with a blazer and a tie. And that gave him a real sense of purpose and a sense of where he was going and helped him to focus.
Well, there's less to think about.
Interesting. Yeah, exactly. Well, they'll still have a uniform. It's going to be less formal, I think, because I think the school realized that was not the right fit for the kid. It wasn't really of the times.
Yeah.
So I think that's, what they did.
Give them a little freedom to kind of.
They're giving them a more casual uniform.
Casual, yeah.
Still uniform, but they don't have to wear a blazer and tie every day, which I think is a really good thing. I think it's progress.
Yeah. Let them kind of have a little identity at the same time. Structure plus identity.
Wow.
Yes, it's always fun.
That was a little, I'm not going to lie. That
close
was
to home.
Oh my God.
Eddie has his own ADHD issues.
PTSD. Right there.
Well, I think we all have a little bit of that. So
growing up, Eddie had some ADHD as well. And I think felt that he definitely could have used, a good teacher or someone to kind of help him with that structure. We talk about it all the time. Like, as an adult, I'm like, if only I could just give you some structure as an adult. Like, I just wish you had it as a child, because as an adult, you'd have those coping skills, or you'd have these tools. And it's so hard as an adult to see another adult that you're like, if only as a child you had these tools, you'd know how to, it's hard.
Yeah. And I like the fact that now as a society, I think a lot of the stigma is taken away. And I think that there's a lot more resources for parents than there used to be. It took me a very long time to get any kind of diagnosis because, I would be told, no, he's not autistic. He doesn't have this. He wasn't dyslexic. He wasn't this. And so it takes a very long time sometimes to come up with the right diagnosis. And then, getting help, which we're going to talk about later, is a whole other thing. So I think that's really hard. But at first, we also were very against any formal treatment. We wanted to just work on changing his diet and making sure, one thing we did was we would walk him to school every day. The teachers felt that would just get rid of some of his energy because he had so much energy. Yeah. But that's also true of, let's say, a 7-year-old boy, that they have a lot of energy.
Yep.
So we would walk through Central Park to his school. So it was about a 25-minute walk to get to school.
And that's a lot.
That was really healthy for him.
On you as a parent as well. I think the commitment, that gets overlooked sometimes when it's like said to parents, oh, well, so walk them to school for 25 minutes. Well, not everyone has the capabilities to just.
Are you going to have a car waiting
and it has
for me?
to time out to when you have to be at work. And even things like they want, while he's doing that, he also did a lot of, I forget what it's called, but it was kind of an audio therapy where he would listen to different sounds. He had special headphones and there was some kind of therapy that he had to do, I think 2 times a day for a few years. We were doing that. So that's another thing that you have to make sure to do. And, and they suggested doing that while you're traveling or while they're eating meals. It's just, there's a lot of things to remember. And I think that I didn't always, I failed in a lot of it because a lot of it you would go to, occupational therapy and you're supposed to follow up at home and do these exercises every day. And sometimes you just don't, you just collapse when you get home. I mean, I was just tired. I worked a very intense job and the period after, the years after the recession, which is when he was very young, because they'd laid off so many people, I was working very long hours. So it was a fight just to get home before he was asleep. And, the nanny and, was there and it's a lot when,
I want to say for you, don't say that you failed because I've heard parents say that so many times. I've said it myself. We're thrown so many different therapies and ideas and tools that we should be trying with our children. And it is thoroughly exhausting to try all of these things and impossible to do them all correctly or do them all in general.
Yeah. And you're just practicing.
Well, yeah.
It's hard. You're throwing stuff at the
only
wall.
Kid that doesn't have sugar or gluten. I mean, it's really, really bad.
You're throwing stuff at the wall and you're hoping it sticks.
Yeah.
And not everything's going to stick.
Yep.
Yeah. And eventually we did have him take medicine and that's a whole other issue.
Yeah.
And has its own complications.
Yeah.
It's not a perfect thing.
You're going to try many different ones and and
there's side effects.
Yeah. And something's going to work now that might not work when he's 20 and that might not work when he's 30. And, I think that's a whole nother conversation where I think there's a stigma around, you get to a point where the medication might be the answer. I think not that this is my opinion may not be everybody's opinion. Everybody's decisions are their decisions. But I definitely think, like you said, like choosing the diet, choosing all of these things and trying all of these therapies first was probably the right way for you guys because you are trying everything you can before you get to the medication tool because you are thinking about your child first. You want to make sure you're doing everything you can before you put something in their body that might be harmful because it can be harmful. There are medications that can be harmful. But it can also be helpful. You're weighing the kind of pros and cons of it.
Exactly. It's very hard. And, it's also that there are side effects that have different impacts at different ages. So the longer you can wait, sometimes it can be better. But we did reach a point where not only was he a danger to himself, but he could potentially be a danger to somebody else and to another child. And that's really where you have to really make some tough decisions. But the side effects are real. I mean, he really, has trouble falling asleep at night. It affects your appetite. And there is the potential that it can affect growth. Mm-hmm. So, sometimes we try to not do medicine on the weekends. I also really, because he's 12 now and can articulate his needs, some days I say, well, do you not want to take it today? It's a weekend. You don't have anything scheduled. Then I'll say, okay. And sometimes I'll say, oh, but I'm going to go do this activity, or I'm playing with 3 friends and I really want to focus. Can you give me a small dose?
Right.
Well, I think that's important that you're listening.
The difference it makes in his personality. He knows at this point.
I think
he feels different.
That's super important that you as a parent are willing to listen to him kind of in his needs. Because there are parents out there that are probably like, oh, you're 12. You don't know what's right. You know, I've talked to the doctors and this is what I feel is right. We've talked to guests already at this point who have said that now as an adult, me having the freedom as a child and my parents giving me that voice made me a stronger adult, that I was able to speak up when a doctor said something and I didn't feel comfortable with that. So you giving him that voice to be able to say, hey, this makes me feel comfortable or this doesn't, is super important for when he becomes an adult and he's sitting in a doctor's office alone and a doctor might say to him, hey, I think you should take this medication. And he might not feel comfortable with that. He's going to be able to speak up for himself.
We're very fortunate. We have a very conservative doctor who is always saying, do you feel you can take the dosage down a little bit? Do you maybe want to, let's try not giving him the extra little booster area. You know, we give him a little extra at lunchtime. Do you want to try not doing that? Do you want to try taking a break for the summer? So we're very fortunate that we do have that conservative doctor that's always saying, you don't have to be on the medication forever. Let's see how it goes. Because you don't want to see dependency, and it is something foreign in their body, and it can affect their personality as well. He knows he acts differently. It's a sort of a quieter, chill personality, which can be great. Yeah. But it's also not great. It's not his true self. Yeah. So it's important to do, for example, when it comes to standardized testing, he did horribly. It was worse than if you just pick the answers random. It was, as if he wasn't there. It was worse. And then when he had the medication, suddenly he's incredibly bright. I mean, I think he, really top of the class, just very book smart when he can focus. Yeah. But without the medication, he would not get that focus that he needs.
I think that's a key word. They're standardized is like the worst point in it, is that it's standardized and that they're not really looking at how each kid learns and how each kid can test and how each kid can communicate. They're just going with the standard, and not every kid is the standard. But that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day.
No. But it's also important. We did get him into what I believe is the right school that first of all, they've been doing a great job with the remote learning. If he is ever not in the seat when he's supposed to be, I get an email. Well, he gets an email and I'm CC'd on it. If he is slumping in his seat and not sitting upright, I get an email.
That's fantastic.
So they're on him. And I really have to say, we found a wonderful school for him. And they, even just before he started in 5th grade, they knew what he needed. And they said, okay, because he has focus issues, we're going to put him in the front row. We're going to make sure he's not distracted. We are aware of this. And having the teachers just know that is critical, and making them partners and communicating with them.
How long did it take you to get, to find the right school and get him to this point?
It was challenging because, he went to, they're all mainstream schools, I should say. So he went to a school for preschool and he was very rambunctious. And one of the first signs that he had something that was a little bit different was they would complain that he didn't want to transition from one activity to another. Now, here's the thing. We asked him about that and he said, well, I've spent the whole class building this, let's say, Lego structure. I need another 10 minutes to finish it. I know they're going to break it down when I leave it. And that's not fair. I want to work on it tomorrow. So I want to have 10 more minutes to finish it. So to me, I think he's being logical, but to the teachers, he's being difficult. Right. And that's not the rule. The rule is when time's up, you're done and you start over tomorrow, because other children have to use that toy. Yeah. So it's tricky. So that school was a little tricky, but he, quote, graduated at age 5 and then he got into a very strong academic school, but it was very specific our way or the highway school. And I think that it was challenging. And as the years went by, the problem was they could see how bright he was in sort of a book smart way, but yet you had this behavior. And we did have somebody that would sit with him in class. I think it was called the SIAT. And we did have an IEP, which meant he got extra help. So for one period that was maybe a lighter class, he would go and have occupational therapy. He would have extra academic help and all of that. but it was still so much that when it came to middle school, you can't have those services when you start getting to middle school. So then we did switch him to a school that was a better fit for someone that had his needs. But they're all mainstream schools.
Yeah. But it seems like, and I mean, kudos to you for sticking with it, but it does seem like it's been a little bit of a journey for you guys to kind of get him to this point. And for him as well, it sounds like it's probably been tiring, for lack of a better word.
Yeah. Well, he didn't know how much he was struggling. He didn't want to leave the other school because he had friends. He was always very affable. But once he was at the new school, he really loved it.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know what you need till you get it.
Yeah. Once
so he's really happy now. But he's always been a very happy kid. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to pull a kid out of school when they're happy.
Yeah.
But academically, it was going to the tone of the school was going to change in middle school. And it just was not going to be a fit. I thought he would have started to struggle in middle school. So we wanted to prevent that negative experience that we could see coming down the road.
Well, it sounds like, you're probably at the plateau now where things are starting to kind of level out, hopefully.
Yeah, he's a really happy kid now.
That's awesome.
He really is. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Except for the whole pandemic, stuck at home doing your classes on Zoom, missing your friends.
Yeah.
Great.
But look, he's on FaceTime with his friends at lunchtime. And so he's at least social and basically doing whatever other kid is doing.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that they're all doing it right now, which is, it is terrible though. Like our kids, I was just telling someone at least once a week, there's a mini little meltdown where they're just crying and saying, I don't understand why I can't see my friends. This is so hard. When will this end? That's the hardest part. When will this end? When can I go see grandma? When can I? And I don't have an answer. That's, I think, what's harder for them is that there's just not an answer to when they can see grandma, when they can go hang out with their friends again. Like even our daughter was like, when can I go to Target with you? I'm like, you can't.
I know.
I can't take you to Target with me. I can't take it. I'm like, we took little Eddie to buy a bicycle the other day and it was all outside. I'm like, you have to wear a mask. We had to give him like a little kitty mask and it was terrible and heartbreaking to watch. And he's like, I have to take it off. I can't breathe. I have to take it off. I can't breathe. Yeah, and we were like, this is
I'm sorry, he's
terrible to make an 8-year-old wear a mask outside at a bike shop. I'm like, none of this is just, I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah.
The whole thing is so crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I mean, we met 2 months ago and none of this could have ever been expected.
No.
I mean, we were sitting in a room with 1,000 people probably at a conference.
I know.
And yeah. Oh, who knew?
Not me.
I know.
I wish I could be back in Florida right now. I could tell you that.
I know.
It's also
that was the last trip.
It's also the last one. Still like 50 degrees here, and it's like never going to get warm.
It's going to be 67.
It doesn't help. It's been such a rainy, bad weather spring.
It was sleeting
in New York too.
Sleeting yesterday.
Yeah.
I was like,
it hailed.
The kids are feeling the same way we're feeling. I have really sad days too. So it's hard. We're all having a hard time, and I think that as we record this, we're about 2 months in, we're kind of reaching that breaking point where we want to get back out. And I feel like if we don't, we're going to all just go into sort of this slump where it just sort of just becomes ongoing.
Well, it can't be healthy.
I don't even know.
It's not good for long-term mental health on anybody at this point.
No, it's really not. At least the weather will be better and we can be outside a little more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe, depending on where everybody is, but it's really hard. And, my son does go to sleepaway camp now and he had a good year last year and wants to go back.
That's exciting.
He signed up, but I don't know if it's going to happen.
We keep looking for one, but Bella's not feeling it. I'm like,
my God.
It would be so good for her. She doesn't know how good it is.
Weird about it.
It's good.
They want to do it, then they don't want to do it. They'll watch like the show there on
Bunked.
Yeah, whatever. They'll watch like the shit. It's like about camping. They're in a
Disney
camp.
Channel show about camp.
Well, like all those shows have like at least some kind of segment when they go to camp. I'm like, don't you want to go to camp? They're like, no.
They don't want to.
Like,
they don't want to leave. They're going though, whether they like it or not.
Social. They just want. I want social to be on the screen.
They're going. So let's pivot or transition a little bit. And we have some questions for you as our financial planner in regards to financial, the burden on special needs parents and their financial kind of world. We know, living in the special needs disability world, that it can be a different a different financial outlook for us sometimes. There is a financial burden on whatever level you're at for special needs. For us, even though Eddie's needs are minimal, we still see a financial burden, sometimes more than we realize, I think. A lot of times we'll think, oh, we don't even have it that tough. And then what if I sit down and I did the math out? I'm like, how do we spend so much extra than the typical parent? Like, where does this money come from? Even when we were crowdfunding to do the podcast, I went to go like figure out some statistics, and I was like, how can there be like $350 a month some special needs parents spend extra than the typical family? That's so much extra money.
Okay, that's a statistical cross. Yeah. So I'm coming from New York City, which is a whole different thing.
It's probably even more money.
It's like a different language. Yeah. That's one session for half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. So it's
crazy. Completely unaffordable. I mean, it's insanity. And, one of the things we talked about before we started recording was that there is a lot of public assistance available. And I would say that everyone should, no matter what your needs are, if you're a taxpayer, you have paid into the system, you think you might need it, because my husband and I do fine. We can pay our bills. We're not, we don't have endless means, but we're okay. And I had mixed feelings, and people said, you don't know how expensive this could get. Just file. You can always not use it.
Yep.
And thank God I did, because I didn't know what was going to hit me.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It's a lot, and it's endless, and it's many years.
Yeah.
And so when you look at OT, which is occupational therapy, PT, physical therapy, you look at having somebody in the classroom. And then we also had something called SETS, which is academic help, SETTS. I forget what that stands for, but they all go into this IEP. And before you even do that, you're looking at evaluations. So you might have a private evaluation that could be $5,000 or $6,000. And then you can wait on a 6-month wait for the public evaluation to then get the IEP. And then a lot of providers won't work with you until you get an RSA, which means you can go out of the specific network. And then a lot of providers want enhanced payment, which then they stopped doing. So then no one will work with you. And then they all want you to pay under the table, by the way. So they'll get a certain amount of money from the government. And then they say, but my rate is really double that. So you have to make up the balance, or I won't work with you.
That's crazy.
I mean, it's just, but that's every single one.
Yeah.
Every single one does that. So you're stuck, and it's your child, and you will spend your last penny for your child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm not an educator, and I was working full time while this is happening. I'm certainly not qualified to sit and do homework with him, nor should that be my relationship with him, because I'm not a teacher. I think more than ever, we all appreciate teachers given what's going on. We know this stuff is not easy. So, you do want those resources, even if you don't think you're going to need them. The process is going to be so long and so involved. Just start.
Yeah.
You really, you want every bit of help that you can get. And that's not counting. Also, there's a lot of group socialization classes can be really helpful, because a lot of these challenges manifest in social things that they outgrow. Right now, he's outgrown them. He's got friends. They call him, he calls them. You're not having to make play dates for him. Totally, not 100% normal. It's, middle school, but it's normal for middle school. So you get over that, but you get over that because you've done the work.
Yep.
Because you're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, because you're doing group social skills therapy, things like that are really helpful. And you don't want to end those too soon either. These are not things that you do for 8 weeks. These are things that are for many times for years.
Yeah.
So it's important to have the support group, and it's also important to have providers that talk to each other so that you're coordinating everything. But think about what I just went through. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just thinking about it now.
Yeah.
All these things were happening. I mean, I did have a nanny, but like you're talking about OT, PT, CBT, SETS, a SEAT, social group sessions. I mean, it's a lot.
Yeah. And many of that insurance isn't covering.
Yeah.
What?
And many of that insurance is not covering.
Well, I did have, like I said, I'm in New York, and you can get social services. So it's really important to be applying for that.
Okay. So so wherever you are, step one would probably be find your resources.
Yes.
reach out.
It's usually called an IEP.
Yep. So reach out. I know, like,
education plan, I think.
Yeah. We actually just taught Eddie that on another episode.
Get that. and then they do the whole report. And I'm forgetting, I should have looked up before we recorded, but they do, you have to get an annual report and progress report. And they have goals that your child, is hopefully going to meet with the help of the different providers that you've engaged. And you have to really make sure that you meet all the deadlines. And very often the red tape is, you'll just be getting random letters in the mail.
Yes.
Very old fashioned. It's very retro.
And you have like 2 days.
They're not going to email you, call you, or text you. No. You'll get an email. You'll get literally a letter in the mail, and they'll say, tomorrow at 2 p.m., you need to be at this office.
Yes.
And I'd be like, I have a job. What I will tell you is that they were first of all, the people themselves that work in these offices are lovely. They are bureaucrats. They know what you're going through. And everyone I talked to in New York City was wonderful when you get them on the phone. They are advocates for children.
We had the same experience.
Paper pushers, they're great.
Yep.
And if you tell them, I cannot physically leave my job and be, 60 blocks north at 2 p.m. on a Wednesday on one day's notice, they'll let you call in. So ask before you drive yourself crazy. Make sure you ask, can I do this by phone?
Oh, that's a great point. I never thought to ask that. And that is huge for us as well. We have scrambled. First time I went up there and it was just, you wait hours, they're late. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I think I told you that. Remember that time?
Scrambled you've said we could call or something, I think. But I'm like, I don't know. I get overwhelmed and I get nervous. Another thing that I've heard great advice is, because I think we've said it, like I've talked to people who like go in like guns blazing. Like for this.
Oh, be nice to them. They're there to help you.
Nice. They're ready to help you. Bring cookies.
They have money for you. Be nice.
They're ready to help you. And we've used them as a resource. Like I go into that meeting and saying, we're struggling here. Who do you have for resources? What can you do to help me? This is what we need. We're looking for outside activities. We're looking for whatever. They usually, if they don't have it, they've made phone calls for us. And I don't have to make all those 50 phone calls. They'll make all those phone calls for me. Like they have a social worker there that can do that for me. I don't have to do all that work.
I think we should
a lot of resources.
Reiterate with the whole guns blazing, because there's a lot of parents out there that feel like they are the freedom fighter, for their child.
Well, there's ways you have to be a fighter for your child, but there's ways to fight that are going to be more effective.
Exactly,
and you have to realize these are people that are on your side. They've chosen. They don't get paid a lot. These people that choose to do this, they want to help, and they're frustrated with the system and the tools that they've been given just as much, and they have a limited budget, and they're trying to do their very best. And by the way, I don't know about in other cities, but there's a scandal going on with the SATs and these movie stars and all that. And there are people that try to get their children to be like fake diagnosed. And so a lot of these people are dealing with that sometimes, where they just think that their child should get extra time on a test. Let me tell you, I don't think the extra time does anything. I think it's fine that he can in general. The teachers have said that's not the issue.
Yeah.
It's just not. I mean, it's fine. And I think he gets to be in a different room. Maybe he can focus better. Fine. But like, there's a lot of people that ruin it for the children that really have this need, because they want to game the system. And I think that they do have their radars up for that in these, that they do have sometimes parents that want their children to have a diagnosis so that they will get advantages when it comes to testing, especially when they get older.
Yeah. The high school, college level.
Yeah. Well, that's a part of these allegations in the scandal, was that parents would say that their child had a need to have a privately administered exam so that they could cheat, which is crazy when you think about it.
Right, because they would be like, really they need to be in a different room, and then they would pass off the test. There would be somebody else to take the test for them, and then put it back in.
Not to plug another podcast, but there is a great
Gangster
podcast. Gangster Capitalism. I love it. I'm so obsessed with it. But it's all about
check it out.
It's all about the college admission scandal, and I love it. I can't
the whole podcast is about that?
Yeah, it's like Serial. It's like I can't get enough of it. I'm so obsessed with it.
This guy did his research and stuff. It was amazing.
I find the whole thing. I just find that the whole thing really absolutely fascinating, because I've been through it with my stepchildren, the college admissions process, and I'm like, get a life.
Oh, by the end
really,
of it,
really, this is what you're doing with your money, and this, I can't even your children should not go where they shouldn't go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, why would you want that for your child?
Exactly. Well, by the end of it, I was like, Bella's going to community college. Like by the end, I was like, she doesn't need to go to any of these.
Our kids aren't going to college. She's like, it's bullshit.
Waste of money.
All right.
Yeah, I was like, this is bullshit. They're not going to any of these colleges. We don't need any of this. Like, by the end of it, I was like, this is such a waste of money. I was so frustrated.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll see.
She does need to go to
we'll
college,
see what happens when all these fancy colleges go virtual and people, myself included.
Yeah.
My stepson goes to an expensive private college and I'm kind of like, we'll see what happens. But if they're virtual, that's just not cool.
Well, yeah.
I mean,
now you're spending all that money.
That price point.
Yeah.
They're getting the same education as your 12-year-old probably.
Well, like I said, I have to say his school for the situation, I think his school is doing an amazing job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
They're holding the children accountable. They're making them do as they're emulating the real classroom as much as they can and much better than I have heard from other classrooms. I mean, I've heard really disappointing stories about other situations because the teachers are now home with kids in some cases. So you're supposed to teach class and yet you're suddenly home with your children who are supposed to be in class.
Yeah.
How does that work? Because
Exactly.
usually you would have childcare watching your children while you were teaching. So you could focus on teaching. So it's a really challenging situation for a lot of teachers. So I think we have to empathize with them.
Yeah. We just need to take a wash of the school year.
Well, we play that fun little
Pretty
game
much.
like
Thankfully, our kids aren't in high school or anything, super important. Not that, sixth grade isn't important, but it's not the same.
Yeah. It's all right.
Like junior year of high school. Although, look, everyone's in the same boat.
Yeah. It's all the same, but different. It is what it is.
Yeah. Once a day I'll point out,
anyway,
like, that's crazy.
Like everyone should go for whatever resources they can get. And it is important to advocate for your child. And it's important to, like I said, be nice to everyone, but also hold your ground. If they say, I'm not sure you need it, just say, well, what do you need to see? Sometimes they'll want, I hate to say it, but another evaluation. And then you got to get on the list if you want the public evaluation. I mean, there was, one point they thought there was something with his eyes and had to get that evaluation. It was just, oh my goodness, so many different things. So, just ask them what would qualify if they, cause you're looking for, at one point they were looking at, they have children do the buttons, like, fine motor skills, things like that. What are you looking for him to get this kind of therapy? I mean, I thought he needed speech therapy, but he was evaluated several times and they felt that he just wasn't trying to speak. Yeah. Fully. It was just sort of it went into more of OT. Yeah. I guess.
So now in your kind of way, in your world, what about even with your children, what about helping children learn about their own finances for the future? I would think normally this is a difficult thing to kind of teach children about. Do you think it's something that would be even harder with a child with special needs or disabilities?
Not necessarily, because as I mentioned, my son really enjoys structure. So for example, he had a jar filled with coins that was a savings jar. We did a save, spend, give, which is something recommended by an author named Ron Lieber, who wrote a book called The Opposite of Spoiled. So he had his savings jar and we wanted to put it into the bank. And we brought it to the bank. I thought that you could just dump it in a machine and it would count it for you. Apparently not. Apparently you can either go somewhere and you pay 11% at some box at a supermarket, which was not close by. It was very heavy. And plus it's 11%. Or they were very kind. In our case, they handed us this tray where you can count out the money and you can roll it yourself.
Yep.
And I said, well, it's your choice. It's your money. Do you want to walk, 8 blocks and pay 11%? Or, we have an hour before your next activity. Do you want to just chill and make the rolls of the money? And he's like, well, let's start. Let's see how long it takes us to do. It took forever. We did some and we ended up bringing it home, but we're sitting there rolling this money and we even did a little Instagram story on it. And he said, Mom, this is kind of, this is very satisfying. He kind of found it relaxing to just make stacks of pennies, because it's that sort of that feeling of order and counting. And it was interesting. He observed, how much more money was in the roll with the quarters versus all this work for 50 pennies. And it still was only worth 50 cents. Yeah. Versus the quarters, the same amount of work yielded you so much more money. And,
$5.
Talking about what he could buy with this amount of money and adding up how much he had. I mean, I still remember it was $42.71. I mean, it's crazy. We literally sat there. So I think that a lot of lessons can be very helpful to them and really help them make sense and give order to their world.
Yeah. And I mean, in that you're teaching him not only those math skills and those money skills, but also how much his money is worth to him. So the next time he has that same amount of money, is it worth walking those blocks and taking that percentage, or is it worth doing the work? Like, how much is that money worth to him at that point? I think that's a super big life lesson, because as adults, you're kind of like, how much is this money worth to me? Is it worth using my credit card? Is it worth using my debit card? Like, you're kind of learning. Do you want to pay the interest on that, or do you want to use my debit card? It's kind of the same lesson in a way. So do you recommend getting children like bank accounts? And at what age do you recommend kind of starting to teach them financial lessons and things like that?
So right now we've gotten each kid a bank account at 13, like their own, that they literally administer. That I should say, well, he has a bank account actually. So I take that back. He does have one, but he doesn't have a debit card.
Okay. Like a savings
that's in his possession. Right. So we did deposit that money in his account. And I also told him, because I would add up his birthday gifts. I did tell him that I moved a certain amount of money into a brokerage account where it's in an S&P 500 index.
Okay.
Because I didn't want so much money sitting in that account. I mean, he's 12. So, a lot of birthday gifts add up. So you don't want that much just sitting in savings. And I brought up stocks. You have to kind of see what kids are interested in. He hasn't been that interested yet. So you answer their questions. And, there's a lot of things that he sort of knows by osmosis because of sort of a job hazard with me. Yeah. So he had a toe injury. And he was kind of annoyed at me, but I started going on about, well, it's December and we've already used up our deductible for our insurance. So this is great because it'll pay for 70% of your And he's like, I know how that works by now, Mom, like with the eyes rolled, he's just, and then he poses because he knows I want to do an Instagram story about it. So
that's so funny. We're the typical kids.
Like one post, but I wanted to check the picture first. So you always have to get the consent for that. But, he's sort of over it with me. I mean, my favorite moment was when he pointed in the bookstore to my book. I love that picture because he was proud of me. I had a book in Barnes and Noble. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
So, they know what I do. So it happens, by osmosis. They sort of kind of know the deal and they pick things up along the way.
I think that's pretty awesome. I mean, I think for us as parents, we're always like, we try to implement money strategy or learning about their own finances to them. We have one child who...
Eddie's really good.
Yeah, Eddie has like $200 in cash squished into his little piggy bank and refuses to spend it. And then occasionally he'll be like, Mom, I just want to give you $1. I just want to give you $1.
Mother's Day, he was like,
"Oh, that's so nice.
Can I put money?" And I was like, "No, you can't." He was like, "What about just $1?" I was like, "You can put $1 in."
Then he said, "I said you gave me $1 for Mother's Day." He said, "I just have so much. It's just $1."
I'm balling.
Nice.
Yeah, and then Annabella never has any money, no matter how much money she
spends it faster than she makes.
Yeah, it's always negative.
Can you give me a Starbucks? I'll pay you back.
Yeah, I'll pay you back. She always has negative amounts. It burns a hole in her pocket the second she gets it. She has to spend it. She had gift cards for Christmas. It's like, when can we get on Amazon? Like, she can't spend it fast enough. So teaching her the meaning behind money and how to save is so difficult for us because she's just so eager to get more of something.
Well, she might not be ready.
Yeah.
She's not.
Yeah.
That's a frustration. And, look, there's 3 kids and, I raised them all. All of my stepchildren grew up living with us and very different personalities, especially when it comes to money. And, as the oldest one got out of college and, was suddenly on her health insurance, she has a whole new appreciation. And the irony is she has good. She works for a big company. So in theory, she has good insurance. It's not great because it is what it is. Yeah. But I mean, she works for a large company. So she has real insurance and it's really bad. But that's what insurance is these days. And seeing the behavioral change when it was suddenly her own money that she had worked so hard to earn in her very real grown-up job, you see a whole change in behavior. And sometimes it's not going to happen till then.
Yeah.
Until they feel it. You have to feel it yourself and understand the feeling of, do I really want to go to this discretionary appointment that I don't really need to go to?
Yeah.
People start making different choices.
Yeah.
So that's maybe when it's going to come. And maybe, you just start at the appropriate age. You say, this is what you have. And when you run out of money, then that was your choice. And they might have to miss something that you really don't want them to miss.
Yeah.
So, but that's easier said than done. That's a really hard thing to do.
Yeah. Kristen just takes my debit card and I'm not
I take it away.
I'm actually
You're
really
very
good. I grew up.
We're kidding.
Yeah. I grew up sorry, Mom and Dad. I grew up,
No, we both grew
poor.
up. We grew up well, we grew up in the city. We grew up with less than most. And so I think we learned because of that, like what we don't want to be. Yeah. So
it's like, I got money I'm
we're
saving
much
that
more frugal
because I got to build. I need something to like look forward to like live off of eventually.
We're also very hungry for like the next because of that. Yeah.
So it was great. I would just make money. And be
sometimes that's I don't want to say it's easier, but I think that my children, I don't like to say they're spoiled, but I would like to say they're ignorantly, blissfully privileged. They don't really know that they have as much as they have. And, we're trying. I mean, look, we always had a maid, and my son literally said to me, I kid you not, because we don't have a maid up here. He said to me, when I did his laundry here, I apparently did it on a Tuesday and the maid comes on Wednesday. And as I said, he does like his routine, and Wednesday is the day that the maid came. So you know what's coming.
Oh, stop.
It's just because he needs structure and routine. He was like, Mom, can you do my laundry on Wednesdays? It's been on Wednesdays. And I just looked at him and I was like, I'm going to do your laundry when I do it, or you can do your laundry. And he was like, okay. I was just like, oh no. And not only that, you're making your bed now, because he made his bed at camp. He made his bed.
Yeah. They're capable.
At a certain point, I tell him to make it, but I don't always follow up because I'm just tired. It's just sometimes you just can't. I don't know.
They're getting back in it later on in the day.
Well, that's the thing. It's like the kids are.
But when he said that to me, I was just like, oh no.
Tuesday, Wednesday.
I get that he needs structure. I get that Wednesday in his mind, Wednesday is the day that you get your laundry. But I was like, you got resilience here, honey. Resilience.
Yeah. You'll live.
I was like, come on, kiddo. You can do this.
You'll pick your battles, right?
No, I mean, look, but I say that jokingly, but not, because as I said earlier, like it is a real thing to need structure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like that's a valid thing, that this is how his week is structured. And he plans his, using his clothing in a way that, he knows he gets fresh clothing on Wednesday afternoon after school. And so that shook up his routine, all kidding aside. But at the same time, I think it's important to teach children resilience and that they can't be overly coddled. I mean, you need to have empathy for the challenges that they have to a point.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah.
So we ask our guests all the same question. If you had 30 seconds to speak to our community, what advice would you give them?
Have empathy for your children. Understand that each person has a different personality. Siblings are very different. Life stages are very different, and needs are going to change as you go through a journey. And the person they are today will inform who they are going forward, but they're going to evolve, and you have to kind of be ready to change along with them and understand their needs. But really just try to be empathetic. I look back at the years when he was younger and I just didn't get him. So try to get them and figure out what they need.
That's awesome. I think that's a big thing. Like, we always think like as a parent, before your kids get older, you're like, I got this down. I'm going to figure this all out. And then you kind of go forward, and I realize all the time, I'm like, every time something happens, I look back and I'm like, I just thought I knew what I didn't know. Like I thought I knew this and I had it down. And then I look back and I'm like, nope, got that one wrong. Nope. Got that one wrong. Yeah.
They change too.
Oh, that's for sure. Sometimes I'm like, oh, you're way further beyond what I thought. Like you're way more mature than where I thought. And I was kind of parenting you as if you weren't at that point yet. So I'm evolving as she's evolving at the same time.
Right. I mean, I didn't come into this with any experience. And so you can't be too hard on yourself because we're all flying blind.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. I just keep it real with the kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, what?
It's because you are.
What's wrong?
Still there.
What do you want? Yeah, it's fun. Well, because I'm
like, what is wrong?
I'm fortunate. I get I'm fun dad. Yeah. You had a bad day. Let's go. We're going to go do something. Like you can dictate what it is. You can tell me what you want. We can go do that. But that's what we're going to go do. Where it's like, I just always have the stupid jokes or the, Dad, it's not the right time comments. I don't know.
That's helpful for them, though. Yeah. I think when they're having a tough day to be like, what do you need from this situation? And then just following their lead.
In the moment, you'll be pissed, but later that night, you'll be like, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for intervening. You're welcome. I'm pretty good.
So what are you working on next? Like what's kind of to come for you? things are kind of weird right now.
I'm supposed to be working on my book, which is Raising Financial Grown Up, which is really about the older years, about, kids 16 to 26 and helping them learn to be independent adults. And I have to kind of rethink that a little bit, because with this pandemic, you want kids to be independent, but you also want them to know that it's okay to be a little dependent sometimes when you need to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Because this is the time when I think there's a lot of intergenerational support going on.
Oh, for
and we
sure.
have to know that that's okay.
Well, I think it's too, that's an age group. Even I know when I was there, you kind of get lost at that point. You don't really learn those skills when you're in high school, and then you kind of get on your own in college, and you're sort of on your own financially, but not really. And then you get this like real job, and you're really on your own, and everything's thrown at you. And what to do with that, and what to do with your money. You kind of sometimes don't figure that out until you have a family and you're in your 30s. And sometimes it's too late. And you think, I wish I did all that in my 20s.
Yeah. I mean, that's always going to happen. None of us are perfect. In part, I do talk about, when I give speeches, some of the mistakes that I've made, which are so fun. But it is. I mean, it's a lot of the book is even just, how do you read your first paycheck? I mean, there's a lot of acronyms and, lingo, and, I didn't know what those were.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't just say this is for Social Security. No, they have to put all these different acronyms on. So you don't know what's going. You just know that like half your paycheck went away.
Yeah.
Right. So it's important that people understand that and know what it's going for, so that they make informed choices and know what resources they have, even especially if they work for a big company, to know what's available there, understanding how to navigate their HR website, understanding the impact of different decisions. You talked about your debit card versus your credit card. It's important to understand that. Even it's not just a question of taking money out of your bank account versus potentially paying interest on it if you carry a balance on a credit card. A debit card does not have as much protection as a credit card if it gets stolen. So, it's not always a clear decision, which is the best thing to have. So it's a little complicated. So the book is aimed at parents of children that age, to help the parents teach the kids.
Perfect.
Because as much as we want to say that schools are going to do it or the kids should do it themselves, it's okay for the parents to help too. We all have a vested interest in people being successful as financial grownups.
Yeah, I think, and we have a responsibility for sure.
Well, it's funny because I'm from the stigma of it is up to it was up to me. You control the money. Like you can't rely on your family. It's on your back and it's on your hands. Like that you have to take care of and you have to provide.
But you need those tools.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, ultimately it is. But if the parents are interested enough to, for example, read my book when it comes out, they can help. Because if you want to give your kid the help, not give them just piles of money, not that kind of help, but give them the resources so that they can learn to be financially independent. Because otherwise, generationally, and of course, things are changing because of the pandemic. But what was happening is that my generation, Gen X, was at a point where we help our children so much that we're ruining our own retirements, and we could be put in a position where they have to support us. And I would rather have you be harsh with a kid in their early 20s and get them on a good path than give them so much that they don't become independent. And then they're also forced to support you because you spent all your money on them.
Yeah.
Too much money on them.
Yeah.
It was a funny little saying. It's like, spoil your kids, raise your grandkids, raise your kids, spoil your grandkids. And it's kind of like the idea of if you take the time to, put that effort into your children, you'll get to reap those benefits. But when you just don't take that time to put the effort in, there's you can't reap what you sow, That
was so many analogies.
Oh gosh. Yeah. Cutting it all out.
Love it. So everyone should go out and get your book that is out right now. That's Financial Grown Up, right? Where can they find it?
It's everywhere except we're all trapped at home. So probably order it online. It's called How to Be a Financial Grown Up.
How to Be a Financial Grown Up.
It's in paperback. It's in hardcover. It's in audio. I actually did the audio myself.
Awesome.
It's really interesting. There's actors that do some of the quotes from famous people, which was interesting. We got to choose the people that read. My husband and I got to choose the people that read the little parts, which was really
that's awesome.
Kind of a fun experience. And please listen to our podcast, Money with Friends, now part of the Westwood One Network, which I co-host with Joe Salcihai and a rotating cast of really smart people. And we do a lot of stories about money that are current, personal finance stories, headlines that you see in the newspaper, making them relevant, teaching you what you can learn from those stories. And then, of course, Financial Grown Up is real money experiences that had a huge impact on the lives of very successful people and the lessons that we can learn from them.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Bobbi. We really appreciate you coming on and talking with us and sharing your resources with us.
Thank you so much,
Thank you
Bobbi
so
Rebell.
much. I feel honored to be part of the first season.
Yeah, we're super pumped to have you. So glad we met at our chat.
I know. Sitting down at the right table.
I know.
I know it's hard to believe this episode is going to be listened to by like millions of people.
Stop.
Millions.
It's incredible.
Millions of
It's
people.
incredible.
Yeah, millions.
It's epic.
My mom, 1 million times.
Well, thank you so much for listening. We really hope you enjoyed this episode. As always, please make sure you share with a friend and leave a review.
You can find all the resources mentioned in this episode on our Facebook or Instagram on @specialaboutspecial. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.